Breaking news. In 2024, voters will cast ballots in over 50 nations. Every democracy, no matter how strong, will face challenges this year. Half of the world's population lives in more than 50 nations that will have national elections in 2024, yet there will be mixed feelings about how many people actually cast ballots. Even the most stable democracies will face challenges this year, and politicians with authoritarian tendencies will gain power. All throughout the globe, people are voting in presidential and legislative races that will shape the future of human rights, economics, international relations, and peace in an uncertain world. This includes countries like Russia, Taiwan, the UK, India, El Salvador, and South Africa. Voting won't be free and fair in some nations. The possibility for manipulation and disinformation, tired electorates, limitations on opposition candidates, and other factors have propelled the fate of democracy to the forefront of many campaigns. The horizon for the upcoming election is a potential showdown between President Joe Biden and his predecessor, Donald Trump. Nevertheless, the biggest worldwide unknown would have to be a Trump triumph in November. The mood of dissatisfaction, impatience, uneasiness among far-flung electorates will be measured by high-stakes votes that take place before that, according to Bronwyn Maddox, director of the London-based think tank Chatham House. Absolutely world-changing votes. Much of the Asia-Pacific region and the United States are watching the results of Saturday's elections for president and the 113-member legislature in Taiwan, which are being heavily influenced by China, the island's self-governance. Government has reaffirmed its intention to seize the island it claims as its own, and Beijing has framed the upcoming elections as a decision between war and peace. The three frontrunners for president have all made it clear that they have no intention of challenging China's resolve by formally recognizing Taiwan's independence. However, rising tensions across the Taiwan Strait could be a result of frontrunner William Lai's campaign pledge to fortify the island's defenses. Lai is presently serving as Taiwan's vice president. Beijing is more accommodating to the Nationalist Party, sometimes known as the Kuomintang, than it is to Lai's Democratic People's Party. Self-governance is the preferred method of preserving Taiwan's de facto independence among the island's 23 million residents. Consequently, housing and healthcare, both of which are domestic concerns, will undoubtedly be significant themes in the presidential contest, and an election that was preceded by violence and boycotted by opposition parties. Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who is the world's longest-serving female leader, won a fourth consecutive term on Monday. Leaders are looking to tighten their grip. With just 40% of the vote, Hasina's Awami League party was re-elected, and now they're trying to silence their critics, which could lead to political unrest. By mid-2024, the most populous nation in the world, India, will have held general elections, and the right-wing Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is expected to secure a third straight term in office. After decades of corruption, Modi has cleaned up India and made it a rising global power. According to his admirers, he is a political outsider. His detractors claim that under his leadership, Hindu nationalists have been more open in their attacks on religious minorities, the press, and free speech. President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador is another prominent figure vying for re-election. Bukele has garnered popular support for his use of emergency powers to aggressively crack down on gangs who commit extreme acts of violence. Despite a constitutional prohibition on presidents serving 2 consecutive terms, Bukele was authorized to run on February 4 by a Supreme Court comprised of his party's appointees. Bukele is unlikely to encounter formidable opposition, despite international condemnation of the suspension of certain civil rights. Legends, and more of the Assembly are either Xochitl Gálvez, a former opposition senator, or Claudia Sheinbaum, a former mayor of Mexico City and a protégé of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, will become Mexico's first female president on June 2. A nation plagued by terrifying drug-related violence and a powerful military awaits the victor. Indonesians will choose President Joko Widodo's successor on February 14 in the biggest democratic nation in Southeast Asia. According to polls, the governing party's nominee Ganjar Pranowo and the right-wing nationalist defense minister Prabowo Subianto are in a tight battle. The son of outgoing leader Widodo is running with Subianto, leading some to speculate that a dynasty may be on the horizon. The corruption-ridden politics that have characterized Indonesia since the fall of the Suharto government in 1998 would persist regardless matter who won. Well-established politicians are also running for office in Pakistan's parliamentary election on February 8, with the country's powerful military keeping a close eye on the process. Officials in charge of the elections prevented the popular opposition figure and former Prime Minister Imran Khan from running since he is in prison. The overturning of his corruption convictions allowed his challenger, the Pakistan Muslim League leader and three-time Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, to be eligible to vote. In addition, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's Pakistan People's Party is vying for the nominations. The election, according to experts, would most likely result in a fragile administration. Attacks on Pakistani security personnel have been lethal, and relations with Taliban-controlled Afghanistan have plummeted, so the vote may have to be rescheduled. Has the tide turned? As a result of economic uncertainty and massive migration, populism gained momentum throughout Europe. The outcome of the next European Parliament elections in June will indicate if more established political groups are able to defeat more radical populists, a number of whom are doubtful about providing military aid to Ukraine. In contrast to the centrist coalition led by Donald Tusk in Poland, the pro-Russia populist Prime Minister Robert Fico was elected by the people of Slovakia in last year's national elections, according to political consultant Mujtaba Rahman of the Eurasia Group. The center will lose ground compared to the last vote in 2019, even though a populist majority is unlikely to be produced in the forthcoming European Parliament elections. Populism manifested itself in the 2016 Brexit vote and the tumultuous tenure of ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson in Britain, a former member of the European Union. The Conservatives, who have been in power for 14 years, will face off against the centre-left Labour Party in a general election in the United Kingdom this year. The polls show that the Labour Party will come out on top. The obstacles facing African democracies. Africa is the fastest-growing continent in the world, but it is undergoing transformation due to factors such as climate change, disruptions in grain supply caused by the conflict in Ukraine, and the growing influence of China and Russia. As of 2023, Niger and Gabon were two of 8 West African nations to experience a military coup. When it comes to regional stability, Senegal is seen as a stronghold. The country's political resiliency was demonstrated in its February 25 election, which came after President Macky Sall stepped down. Those who back opposition leader Ousmane Sonko claim that the government is attempting to thwart his candidacy by pursuing a string of lawsuits that have ignited violent demonstrations. According to Tochi Enikalu, an expert from the Eurasia Group, the upcoming presidential election could either represent a return to the status quo or herald a long-term trend towards more political volatility. Between May and August, South Africa will have a parliamentary election against the backdrop of a faltering economy, devastating power outages, and a nearly 32% unemployment rate. For the long-dominant African National Congress, winning over disillusioned voters will be no easy feat, even though the African National Congress, ANC, has been in power since 1994, the year the racial apartheid system was over. The once revered party received less than 50% of the vote in the 2021 municipal elections. In order to guarantee that lawmakers re-elect President Cyril Ramaphosa, the party will have to establish a partnership if its support falls below 50%. The world's youngest nation, South Sudan, is preparing to finally hold its first elections in December after years of postponement. Although the balloting would be a major step forward, it is now fraught with risk and may not succeed. Last month, UN Mission Chief Nicholas Haysom addressed the Security Council, saying that in order to guarantee free elections that are deemed credible and acceptable to South Sudanese citizens, several things are required, including details about voter registration, a security plan, and a mechanism to settle disputes. Rubber stamp tasks. In March, Russia will have its presidential election, and the winner is almost certain. In his campaign for re-election, President Vladimir Putin encounters merely insignificant resistance. A politician who advocated for peace in Ukraine was disqualified, and his primary opponents are either dead, in exile, or behind bars. Under President Alexander Lukashenko's leadership, the situation in Belarus is quite similar. The first parliamentary election to be held in the nation since Lukashenko's regime repressed demonstrations against Putin allies' contentious 2020 re-election is anticipated to take place on February 25. They have incarcerated or fled the nation thousands of their opponents, Maddox argue.